The Election Commission has announced Felix Tshisekedi as presidential winner of the DRC election. Sudanese security forces fired tear gas to disperse one of the largest gatherings of protesters in the capital, Khartoum. And US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visits Egypt as part of his Middle East tour. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, negotiations to end a partial shutdown of the US government hits a dead end. And in sport, South African boxer Moruti Matanane reflects on his recent victory and a successful decade. We start in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the Election Commission has announced opposition candidate Felix Tshisekedi as winner of the presidential election. The Cap for Change coalition candidate won with 38.57% of more than 18 million ballots cast. He was followed by another opposition candidate, Martin Fayulu, leader of the Lamuka coalition. Fayulu claimed 6.3 million votes, or 34.38%. The ruling coalition's candidate and former Interior Minister Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari came in third with over 4.3 million votes, representing 23.84% of votes cast. The Election Commission President Corneille Nangaa announced the news at a conference at about 2 GMT in what appeared to be timed to avoid any immediate reaction in the streets.
Ramazani
Shadari Emmanuel, 4,357,359. Fayulu Madidi Martin, 6,366,732. Tshisekedi Felix, 7,053,013. Total number of votes, 18,329,318. Participation rate, 47.56%.
Well, DRC presidential election winner Felix Tshisekedi has paid respects to outgoing President Joseph Kabila. He described him as a partner in democratic change. Speaking in the capital, Kinshasa, Tshisekedi said that he would be the president of all Congolese. Tshisekedi had not been widely considered the leading candidate and is relatively untested. He's the son of late opposition leader Etienne, who pursued the presidency for many years. He surprised many last year by breaking away from an opposition effort to unite behind a single candidate. Some observers have suggested that President Joseph Kabila's government sought to make a deal as hopes faded for a win for ruling party candidate Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari. If Tshisekedi's victory is confirmed in the next 10 days by the Constitutional Court, he'll become the first leader to take power at the ballot box since Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, who was toppled in a coup less than 3 months after independence in 1960.
First of all, I wish to thank God, the Master of Time and Circumstances, who allowed for such an event which a few weeks ago was still unimaginable. That is why I follow it directly with, and I know many of you find it hard to accept, but I say it with sincerity. I pay homage to President Kabila, President of the Republic. We must no longer consider each other as adversaries, but rather as partners in democratic change in our country.
The news was followed by celebration outside the Electoral Commission offices and in the streets, with many chanting Congo had turned the page. Thousands of cheering supporters also came out in Kinshasa's neighbourhood of Limete, where Tshisekedi lives. Some chanted that Congo had turned the page on the Kabila era, which began in 1997 when Joseph Kabila's father, Laurent, led a rebellion that overthrew longtime leader Mobutu Sese Seko. Joseph took over in 2001 when Laurent was assassinated. The latest result could, however, fuel suspicion among Fayulu's supporters that Tshisekedi struck a power-sharing pact with Kabila. Well, Tshisekedi rode to victory on a party founded by his late father. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa now looks at his political path.
Felix Tshisekedi represents Congo's oldest political party, which was founded by his father. Etienne Tshisekedi wa Mulumba was a famous opposition leader under then-President Mobutu Sese Seko. He was the leader of the Union for Democracy and Social Progress, the main opposing political party in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Etienne died in 2018 and his son inherited his party, and with it a chance of winning power. The son won the election under the Cape for Change coalition. The younger Tshisekedi was born in Kinshasa in 1963. He led a comfortable life in the capital. But when his father founded the Union for Democracy and Social Progress in the 1980s, he was forced into house arrest. He later moved to Brussels. In 2011, Tshisekedi obtained a seat in the DR Congo's National Assembly, but refused to take it up. 2 years later, he turned down the position of rapporteur at the Independent National Electoral Commission. In March 2018, he was chosen as the official UPDS presidential candidate in the general election. Critics say 55-year-old Tshisekedi is unproven, inexperienced, and lacks the charisma of his father. If confirmed, he will be the first opposition challenger to win the presidential election since the DR Congo gained independence 59 years ago. Wilkisa Nyabwa, CGTN.
The runner-up in the Democratic Republic of Congo's presidential vote, Martin Fayulu, has dismissed the results announced by the Electoral Commission as an electoral coup. The opposition candidate has called on election observers from Congo's Catholic Church to reveal the name of the winner from their vote counting.
We
categorically reject the result published by Mr. Nanga. May God Almighty bless the Congo. To all those who learned of the truth of the ballot boxes, especially to the Congo's national bishops, Episcopal Conference, and the Church of Congo, through your historical observations, we ask you to reveal to the Congolese people and to the whole world the name of the person who really was our people's choice.
Well, Chris Ocharinga has been following this from the DRC capital, Kinshasa. He joins us on the phone with the latest. Chris, what is the mood in the country right now? Does the result represent, would you say, the will of the people?
Well, the mood is, there's a mixed feeling among the Congolese. The supporters of Felix Tshisekedi are jubilating outside the party headquarters and around the streets. But people who voted for Martin Fayulu are saying this is a dark day for the DRC. They are very disappointed with the announcement by the Electoral Commission. They're saying that they have been monitoring the elections in different polling stations and they know that their candidate won. But the Electoral Commission Thursday morning, said that it is Felix Tshisekedi. So there are people who are celebrating, others are very disappointed about it. And does it reflect the will of the people? Well, according to a person from the Catholic Observer team, Senko, he said that from what they have gathered, it was Martin Fayulu who won. But of course, they are not the people who are supposed to announce the official results. People are going along with what the Electoral Commission has announced.
Chris, what happens now? When can we expect the swearing-in ceremony to take place?
Well, according to the original plan, the final results are supposed to be announced on the 15th. So according to the electoral law, the DRC electoral law, the candidates who are disputing the results have 2 days to file a petition at the Constitutional Court. The court is going to pronounce itself on that petition, and then on the 15th, we're going to have the final results announced, and 3 days after, the new president of the Democratic Republic of Congo will be inaugurated.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much for that. That was our correspondent there in the DRC capital, Kinshasa. Well, we are now, we have in the studio joining us John Gachier. He is a veteran journalist and expert on DR Congo affairs. Thank you very much for joining us, John.
Yes.
Take us through the swearing in of the new president.
Thank you, Karen. Perhaps to say that as you had from the capital, the issue, will he really be sworn in, and if he will be sworn in, what will he bring on the table?
So there's a possibility that he might not be because of this contention.
Precisely.
To who actually won.
To who actually won. And perhaps that he could be, perhaps a deal had been cut between him and then the outgoing regime of Kabila. But I would say perhaps the bigger issue is that Congo has gone through a transition that is non-violent as of now. And that this is a good sign that possibly there could have been a trade-off, so to speak. But what will the trade-off entail in terms of Kabila and his system and his entire infrastructure? Will there be a trade-off? Has there been a deal that there will be perhaps a government of national unity or what have you? And perhaps listening to what Tshisekedi is talking about, you get the feeling he's trying to rally the country together. And everybody is hoping then that the electoral process will not be stillborn, so to speak.
Well, actually, he did say that he would be representing all Congolese, but he doesn't appear to have been very popular ahead of the election. Has this come as a surprise to you?
Yes, to a large extent. That perhaps the bigger issue would have been Fayulu to have taken it off, and perhaps there are issues over the long delay in the releasing of the electoral process itself. The international community has raised issues over the cleanliness, for lack of a better term, and whether the electoral process in itself was really up to speed. But could this have been a deal between the Electoral Commission and Kabila, so to speak, because he's still calling the shots. Indeed, it's been said, he's willing to, he still will be a big player in the future of Congo.
So, as you say, he's still calling the shots. Are we likely to see, do you think, a smooth transition of power in that case?
Everybody would hope so, and I think it would be in the interest of Kabila and indeed the new president, and I think the international community, that there is a peaceful transition of power. But perhaps there are very interesting developments that are coming into play. You're having countries like France perhaps questioning, and then you have some regional countries, and the key players in this is Angola, Zambia, South Africa, Rwanda, and Uganda.
Well, tell us why they're the key players.
Because of the conflict, because of the issues around Congo. Democratic Republic of Congo, we would want to say, is at the heart of Africa. At times it was called as the heart of darkness, so to speak. And it's an interesting phraseology here to play on word here. But if there is a peaceful transition, and I think it's in the interest of everybody in Africa, and specifically Angola, Rwanda, DRC, and it would be a very nice signal. And everybody is very excited. I would say I was shocked, and I think a lot of people were really shocked that Tshisekedi was announced as a winner. So perhaps the Electoral Commission has, in a way, pulled a fast one, so to speak, for lack of a better term, but we still have to wait. It's still too early in the day. Okay,
well, he still has been announced as the winner, yes. And so what can we expect from him?
Yes. I think, and I believe, the first thing he will try to really draw in and bring in all the people, specifically the Kabila power structure. That he has to do immediately. And he has to guarantee them that there won't be, perhaps, their interests will be, in most instances, taken care of without perhaps much ado. Then he has also got to deal with the opposition, so to speak, for Fayulu and his big group. Will he form a government of national unity, really? Will he reach out? I think you would expect that that is the most likely scenario, that he will try to reach out to everybody to try and hold the center, so to speak.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your analysis. That was John Gashier there, veteran journalist and expert on DR Congo affairs. Thank you. Moving on now to other news. Sudanese security forces have fired tear gas to disperse hundreds of protesters within the capital, Khartoum. The gathering on Wednesday is seen as one of the largest demonstrations in recent weeks. The protests against the rise in the cost of living and other economic hardships are the most persistent President Omar al-Bashir has faced since he took power. Sudanese Interior Minister Ahmed Bilal says more than 800 people have been detained since the protests began nearly 3 weeks ago. Authorities say 19 people, including 2 security officials, have died. Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visits Egypt as part of his Middle East tour. And Tunisia to train close to 8,000 agents this year as it ramps up the fight against IS.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent and the unique point at which 2 great oceans meet. Now on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is currently visiting Egypt on his latest tour of the Middle East. He was received by Egyptian Ambassador Reda Zaki in the capital, Cairo. His latest tour seeks to rally Arab allies. This follows Trump's announcement that he will be taking 2,000 US troops out of Syria. Well, earlier, Pompeo met with Iraqi officials in Baghdad before heading to Erbil. His second day saw him visit Jordan, Egypt, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Oman. Trump's announcement came as a shock to top US officials, leading to the resignation of Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. To Tunisia now, where the Interior Minister says security will be reinforced by the recruitment and training of 7,700 agents in 2019. The North African state is facing a permanent threat from ISIL, Al-Qaeda and sleeper cells in the region. Authorities confirm that security has improved, but threats to national security remain high.
Tunisian Interior Minister announced that intelligence services, counter-terrorism units and National Guards have foiled an ISIL attempt to establish a so-called Islamic Emirate in the region of Jilma, Governorate of Sidi Bouzid.
The anticipatory counter-terrorist raid was successful. Some terrorists were neutralized while others were arrested. Arms and explosives were also seized during the operation. Security forces are ready to face any other terror threat.
Hisham al-Furati declared before the Parliamentary Security and Defense Committee that a new security plan will be set up in Kasserine, near Algerian border. The strategy will be based on a unified command to combat terrorism. The minister also stressed that the new plan will be generalized in other border governorates, in particular in Janduba and El Kef.
This new security structure, a joint police national guard force, will be dedicated only to fight against terrorism. This joint force will have a higher degree of freedom of initiative, and it is not required to refer to the National Territorial Command. Experts with the highest qualities have been chosen to lead this unit.
Experts believe that terrorist groups have changed their modus operandi. They are relying on dormant cells and are now using people with no police record.
Terrorist cells have adapted their strategy to muddle the police, following the arrest or the killing of several key figures in sleeper cells. They rely on ordinary people, but intelligence services are aware of this scenario.
Fourati said that many Tunisians were arrested following their return from conflict zones in Syria, Iraq and Libya. The minister emphasized the importance of the close collaboration between the Tunisian security apparatus and their counterparts at the Arab and international levels. The Interior Minister approved the National Counter-Terrorism Commission's decision to freeze the funds and the economic resources of the terrorist organization Jund al-Khilafa, an Al-Qaeda branch in North Africa, as well as the assets of 40 people accused of terrorism. Some of these individuals belong to ISIL sleeper cells in Tunisia. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
In South Sudan, the government says it wants all foreign nationals living in the country to register within the next 3 months. Juba says the process will help create a database and help combat transnational crime. CGTN's Patrick Oyet now reports.
South Sudan's Interior Ministry says foreign nationals living in the country must now have valid visas, and those in employment should also acquire work permits. Juba is screening all foreigners in the country. Those with valid documents are having their papers verified, while those without any documents are being asked to legalize their stay.
We are not targeting anybody, and we are not going to use any force with them. We are telling them to come alone to register.
Immigrants in South Sudan are mainly from East African countries like Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia and Eritrea. Many of them are either traders or work in hospitality. All traders are now required to obtain valid trading licenses, which has led some foreign nationals to begin the registration process.
I have seen the process which we are doing is not all that hard. I say the staff, because it's something you have to go with the procedure. I come, you collect the form, you fill the form with the details of the passport, with the details of the person. After that, then you have to come, you give to the authorities.
However, there are those who are concerned that the price of a work permit in the country is too high. The government here has set the price of work permit at between $500 for unskilled workers to $4,000 for consultants and managers. It's a fee that will need to be paid on a yearly basis, which is likely to have a big impact on those working and settling in the country. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
The European Union Commission has sent a message of gratitude to EU countries for agreeing to host 49 migrants rescued at sea off Malta. It, however, raised concerns about the time it took to find safe harbour. EU Migration Commissioner Dimitris Avramopoulos says that the past weeks have been tough for Europe, requiring new procedures. The migrants were picked up by private rescue vessels last month. They'll be taken to Malta and then taken up by Germany, France, Portugal, Ireland, Romania, Luxembourg, the Netherlands and Italy.
Predictable and sustainable mechanism in place. Europe needs to uphold its moral and human duty. What needs to follow now is a swift transfer and rapid processing of each case. Our EU agencies are at the full disposal of Malta and the other member states to provide swift support. EASO stands ready to support member states to determine rapidly whether these migrants are entitled to protection. The European Borders and Coast Guard will support Member States to organise the swift return of those that have no right to stay.
In the UK, parliamentarians have criticised Uganda over its record on democracy and human rights in a debate in the House of Commons. However, the UK's government has not gone along with calls to impose sanctions on Uganda and its officials over the issue. Ollie Barrett reports now from London.
This was a debate called by Dr. Paul Williams MP, who is an MP from the opposition Labour Party here in the UK and who is a man who has spent time himself living in Uganda. He raised concern about democracy in the country, saying that he believes that democracy in Uganda is under threat. There were a number of other MPs who weighed in with similar concerns about democracy, about democratic institutions, about elections being free and fair in the country, and also about the treatment of opposition politicians in Uganda. The idea was raised at times of perhaps sanctions being levelled against some Ugandan officials to make the point that Britain is very concerned about democracy in Uganda. We had Harriet Baldwin, though, responding for the UK government. She is a minister in the Department for International Development, and she was at pains to stress what she described as the friendship, the strong friendships, she called it, between the UK and Uganda, but also between UK and Ugandan parliamentarians. She also spoke at length about how she shares Uganda's ambition to develop its economy. At the same time, she said that the UK would speak frankly to Uganda about issues around democracy as its friend. But she also stressed that political contact between the UK and Uganda has, in her words, been revitalised, and she pointed out that President Museveni has visited the UK twice in the last year. She also stressed the praise that the UK has for the Ugandan record in welcoming refugees into the country in recent times. She also stressed the praise that the UK has for the Ugandan record with regards to contributing to peacekeeping missions in Africa. Now, this debate was non-binding, and Harriet Baldwin stressing that the UK is not minded to currently consider sanctions against Uganda, stressing instead the friendships between the two countries, but saying that the UK would continue to offer support for democracy and for democratic institutions in Uganda. Ollie Barrett, CGTN, London.
Well, there have been mixed reactions to the UK debate on democracy in the East African nation. Let's listen to the views from Kampala.
I don't think Europeans qualify to discuss our politics here. And even if they did, the destiny for Uganda must be written by Ugandans. And as long as President Yoweri Museveni is still in good books with the Europeans, there is nothing. It's a PR stunt.
Whatever goes around in Uganda, everything is put into writing for a formality. But if something goes international and whatsoever, our own government at least gets a hint and puts some things into consideration.
Everyone knows Uganda is now, it is on a focal point where all outside countries are examining and seeing how democracy is exercised in Uganda, of which I think it is a very, very good thing.
Our democracy of Uganda is our democracy. So why would they discuss our democracy? They should be discussing their democracy.
Well, we've got all the business news coming up after the break, including negotiations to end a partial shutdown of the US government have hit a dead end. And civil servants in Zimbabwe threaten to go on strike over low salaries.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Now to the US government shutdown. President Trump has walked out of a meeting after Democratic leaders fought back on his border claims. Trump called the meeting a total waste of time. The border issue has become central to a political showdown between the White House and the emboldened Democratic Party. CGTN's Nathan King has more from the White House.
Fellow Americans. In a short address to the American people, a lot of claims about the so-called crisis on the Mexican border.
Our southern border is a pipeline for vast quantities of illegal drugs. 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings.
Immigration lawyer Liana Montesinos, herself a refugee, says the US president is wrong.
Trump continues to send this message that the immigrants are coming to kill you, but that is not true. As we know, these are people who are fleeing persecution. These are minor children, and these are people who just want to be able to live in a country and feel safe.
The president's speech was designed to speak directly to the American people. On Thursday, he'll travel to the southern border to press his case further that a wall is the way to address illegal immigration. But the latest polls show most Americans are against giving Trump the $5.7 billion he's demanding to begin construction. Most blame him for the government shutdown, but the wall was a key campaign promise and his supporters want him to deliver.
I think the motivation that Trump is seeking is for his supporters to inflame their emotions against the immigrant community through false facts and to create this crisis and this fear amongst people and hatred against immigrants. But the truth is, for instance, in my case, I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 11, and I've dedicated my entire life to serve.
Trump's address from the Oval Office has raised the political stakes too. Democrats in the US Congress, who control the cash, gave their own televised rebuttal of his claims. The US government shutdown, now in its third week, for now, shows no signs of ending. In the past, US presidents have used addresses from the Oval Office to calm the fears of a nervous American public in times of crisis. This time, Trump's critics say that he is trying to instill fears into the American people. Nathan King, CGTN, at the White House.
Zimbabwe's civil servants have issued a notice to go on strike. They've given the government 14 days to meet their wage demands. Zimbabwe's workforce said the action was prompted by their employers' continued failure to address their plight. They're seeking improved salaries, allowances and housing. Most civil servants take home a monthly average of $350 and are finding it hard to make ends meet. Last year, just before the July elections, President Emmerson Mnangagwa's administration awarded soldiers a 22.5% pay rise, while police saw their pay go up by 20%, with teachers and other civil servants receiving a 17.5% salary increase. However, the wage increases have been wiped out by a recent surge in the price of goods and services. In Ghana, the central bank's reforms of the banking sector has led to a downsizing of the country's banking sector from 36 banks to just 23. The reduction comes in the wake of financial distress in the banking space, with some industry players engaging in bad or non-existent corporate governance while accumulating a large portfolio of non-performing loans. As CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra, the government believes these reforms will leave the banking sector in a healthier position.
Ghana's central bank began ringing in changes to the banking sector in 2017 with the announcement of a new minimum capital requirement of $83 million. The GN Bank is among the indigenous lenders that could not meet the new rules, and as a result has been reclassified as a savings and loans company.
POG believes this is the best way to go. GN Bank has fully complied. We are here as a savings and loan. We will continue to ensure financial inclusion and go where people don't go.
GN says the change won't affect its customers.
So essentially, the major change that's going to happen is we won't be able to do the forex account and then the clearing. However, due to our clientele base, it's not going to affect us. About over 1.2 million customers of GN Bank do not do forex.
There are concerns about a potential loss of confidence in local banks. Only 16 out of the 36 lenders in the country met the central bank's recapitalization. Some have had their licenses revoked and merged to form the newly established Consolidated Bank by the central bank. 9 Ghanaian banks have collapsed since the Bank of Ghana started its reforms of the sector 2 years ago. GN Bank now has 6 months to transition into a savings and loans company. It could have a tough task ahead, recapturing the savings and loans market in Ghana.
If people choose to do a panic withdrawal or rundowns, then that's what your situation is going to be. Very, very tough. I hope they would strategize very well and also look at their branch network.
But the biggest worry for now is that it may have a knock-on effect on the Ghanaian economy.
Credit to the private sector will possibly not grow. So we don't expect, and if the credit to the private sector is not growing, you don't expect the economy to expand. You don't expect people to be employed.
The government is injecting over $400 million in 6 solvent indigenous banks, which are undercapitalized, to meet the $83 million minimum requirement as part of efforts to maintain stability. The move is expected to protect jobs and ensure strategic Ghanaian interests in the banking sector. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
A South African judge has ruled that the arrest of a former Mozambican finance minister was valid, delivering a blow to his efforts to avoid extradition to the United States. Manuel Chang was arrested in Johannesburg on the 29th of December over an alleged $2 billion loan scandal. His lawyers argued that the arrest was unlawful, but the judge rejected their submission. The indictment alleges that Chang and others violated US anti-corruption laws in a scandal that plunged Mozambique into financial crisis. The defense now hopes to secure bail for Chang. His extradition case was adjourned until Thursday.
I'm therefore not persuaded that the arrest and subsequent detention of the applicant is unlawful. The application is therefore dismissed.
Uganda is considering charging private hospitals for blood used for transfusions. This follows claims that private hospitals are selling blood to patients even though the hospitals get the blood for free from public hospitals. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria reports now from Kampala.
Screening blood for transfusion. Uganda's blood bank prepares more than 350,000 units of blood every year, and health officials say this all comes with a cost.
Every unit of blood we transfuse, government pays $40 to process that blood. So we are saying instead of government paying for that processing, why can't private facilities also contribute to that $40 of processing this blood?
The blood bank in Uganda carries out donation drives where people willingly donate blood, and both private and government hospitals access blood from the bank without a charge. But now the government is concerned that private facilities are selling blood to patients. It's a claim private hospitals deny.
But it's possible they are charging the service fee for the transfusion. You know, the labor for the nurse to monitor, to set up the unit and so on and so forth. Probably that's what they are charging for, maybe under an item called blood transfusion. Otherwise, blood is totally free.
Some donors are now threatening to pull out.
Of course I won't donate. If they continue selling blood, I'm not going to donate, because when I'm donating, I'll have to be paid.
The Uganda National Transfusion Services needs more than $10 million every year to run the bank. But this financial year, it just has $4 million to work with. The proposal to charge private hospitals for blood could help close that gap, but private hospitals say that would be unfair.
This money, which is centralized at the blood transfusion services, is collected from taxes from from the national coffers, to which these hospitals are contributing greatly. What I suppose you're asking is direct contribution now, again, which I think will make them charge.
But the Ministry of Health says more money needs to come from somewhere. A policy of having to share costs of processing blood is yet to be developed, but the Ministry of Health hopes if it's passed into law, it will help improve stocks at the blood bank. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
We are going to a short break now. When we come back, Egypt launches an aid initiative to lift the quality of life of its citizens.
Join us from Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
On to Egypt now. The country's president has launched an aid initiative that will extend throughout 2019. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has named the program A Decent Life. The initiative aims to empower the underprivileged and cover their basic needs. CGTN's Adel El-Mahrouhi tells us more.
Naming the Egyptian citizen the hero of 2018 for sustaining with the economic burdens, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi announced an initiative called A Decent Life. The new aid program aims to reach out to the neediest segment of society and help them overcome challenges to cover their basic needs.
The decent life that the president refers to starts with decent housing. Citizens must find an affordable home to live in. The second aspect is to reach out to the people living in the villages. They are in desperate need of health services. There is also a plan to help out orphans to get married.
The Ministry of Social Solidarity provides monthly financial aid for some 12 million Egyptians. In addition, the government provides food stamps and partial power subsidies. Egypt pays around $14 billion annually to fund these services.
We are trying to complement the current aid programs and expand the initiative's outreach. We have a health campaign targeting hepatitis C and other non-communicable diseases. A Decent Life will also target other health issues.
The government is currently holding a quick demographic scan to refine the database of the poorest 32 million Egyptians. Decent Life will start with the most 100 underprivileged villages, which poverty rates are at more than 70%. Aiming to achieve the highest assistance efficiency, the Ministry of Social Solidarity has been holding planning meetings with the biggest 15 NGOs to coordinate their plan of action.
The initiative is pushing the government, the economic establishments and the civil society to coordinate efforts of engaging with public assistance. The NGOs and the government agreed to divide the program into two main kinds of services.
Decent Life aims to create more jobs through offering loans and opportunities for citizens to start their micro-enterprises.
By fulfilling the basic needs of the poorest segment of society, Egypt is hoping A Decent Life would decrease their reliance on the government. Cairo believes the initiative will help speed up its economic development plan. Adel El-Mahrouhi, CGTN, Cairo.
South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma is set to become a recording artist after reaching an agreement with a local municipality to record popular struggle songs. The move, which is part of ensuring the preservation of heritage, will see the former president starting a new career in music. CGTN's Yolista Jamela has more.
Former President Jacob Zuma is known for his singing prowess. Be it political rallies, funerals of struggle stalwarts, and other events, he often leads in song. Well, he's now officially signed a recording deal. The recording deal was authorized after officials in eThekwini, which is part of Zuma's native province of KwaZulu-Natal and comprises his political base, realized that no archives existed of the liberation songs from the anti-apartheid struggle period.
Before 1994, the history, especially of black people, was either castigated as useless or seen as backward, and therefore it was not kept at all. But that should be understood because South Africa was founded mainly on the basis of racial contradictions. Race here was the main paradigm that was used by government then.
Ngobo revealed that this surprise move would form part of the Metropole's drive to preserve heritage. They believe an album of anti-apartheid music, as sung by a man who returned from exile to eventually lead South Africa, is the best way to do this.
We have been to various public institutions, including broadcasters, to look for materials, especially that relating to the struggles that were waged by black people before 1994, and we could not find them.
So we asked them why they chose the former president instead of perhaps empowering young upcoming artists.
When we come up with these songs and we ask young people, very well-established artists today, to sing these songs, you will find that yes, they are very good singers, but they don't sing them with that gusto. There is no spirit attached to it because they don't understand the context and they were not necessarily part of it.
The move has been criticized as blatant patronage, where people's money will be used, but Ngombo dismisses this. He says Zuma will not earn a fee for recording the struggle songs.
These songs, they will talk about our struggles and remind us that we have not completed the struggles that were started way back in 1912 when the African National Congress was formed and later on other black organizations.
Since the announcement was made that the former president will be recording an album, a number of artists have reportedly shown interest in collaborating with him.
Oh yes, we're still even receiving up to now. People are approaching us. They want to make different types of contributions. For instance, Ladysmith Black Mambazo, a group that is internationally known, they called and said, hey, we heard about this project. We would like to make a contribution and make available our studios to you for free.
South Africans have varying views on this matter.
I think he's going to be really good, to be honest, because if you look back to the political rallies, he was really good. He was really good. He had that enthusiasm that people usually have for struggle songs.
Msholozi will definitely going to succeed in this. In fact, I believe in him a lot.
I think he does enough singing right now. He should focus on his dancing career. That looks a lot more lucrative.
He's an artist. But with our money, hey, Angaz, I don't know.
Not with our money.
You should, you know? Nah, no, not at our money though. As tax-paying people, no.
Yes.
No.
I totally agree. He should continue on the side without us being involved, because us paying is like we involved again, and it's like no.
The project is expected to commence in April. Felix Tshisekedi for CGTN in Durban, South Africa.